you as an analyst are just a talking head
Yes.
who has no idea what they're talking about and has can't provide any guidance on how to help get that company from, say, 100 million to 200 million. And then they find out 2 or 3 years later that their 100 million is turning into 50 million and then 20 million. And then you see them sold for parts. And
Yep.
it's a sad to see that, but it's also something that has happened over and over and over again.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our #1 priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. And if you're joining for the first time, this series is about where we bring very special guests from the community. And for today, we have incredible analyst, Hyoun Park from Amalgam Insights, I guess. And I'll let him introduce. But before we do that, just quick things about logistics. So we are doing these episodes on every Friday. We generally don't do it on every Friday, depending upon the availability of the guest. So this you can find between 8 and 11 a.m. Eastern. So stay tuned on my wall. We have a lot of interviews lined up. From anybody operating in the enterprise software community. Sometimes they are going to be analysts, and sometimes they are going to be. So, on that note, Hyoun, I'm going to turn the table to you. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Hyoun Park. As Sam you mentioned, I run Amalgam Insights, a firm that I started in 2017 to look at, as the initials of the firm say, AI. Actually, look at two big areas: AI and IT FinOps, where I look at the cost structure of telecom, network, software, and public cloud. I've been in tech basically my entire career, but I came from a background of three different areas. In university, I studied chemistry, women's and gender studies, as well as music. And all these things have blended together as I have professionally pursued technology throughout my, oh gosh, it's 25
Yeah,
plus years
and
now.
Hyoun, you are breaking in between just a little bit, but I think we can manage that. So I think you cut out in between in the last sentence. You were talking about chemistry. I think we could catch that. Maybe if you wanna repeat that, that'll help the audience. Towards the end, you were cutting
Oh,
out a
sure.
little bit.
Just
Yeah.
that in college I studied. Yes, that in college I was studying chemistry, women's and gender studies, as well as music, and I found this approach useful in having various different toolkits to pull from as I've been looking at the technology market.
Okay, very interesting. And this is what I personally appreciate and like about the analyst community. 90% of the analysts, especially the good ones, like the ones that have super deep intel, they have very mixed background. They have studied a lot of different things. Personally for me, I have done, finance, CFA. I am a degree engineer, then MBA, then, so many different things, and then worked in so many different industries. And that's why our perspective is be very different. So, Kian, when I look at you, I mean, love your energy. I think yesterday you got up at like 5 o'clock. You posted on social media. You were there. I don't know which conference. So love everything that you do for the community, and how involved you are.
Yeah, it's funny how the MBA degree can take you in different directions. We both have MBAs, and look at where we are now. This is not what business school necessarily taught us to do, but this is
No,
where we
definitely
ended
not.
up.
It's very different.
Yes.
Okay, so talking about different, I guess the whole analyst community is a very mysterious community, and that's what I guess. I think you are connected with Vinny
Mercantani, yes.
Makindani.
Vinny's
Yeah.
great. He's been such a I feel like such a foundational part of this industry analyst world. One of a few analysts who have really shaped how the current market of technology analysis works, and his work with the SAP ecosystem, and in looking at really how software companies create ecosystems is really interesting to me, as well as, of course, the social work he does, the community based work he does to talk about industry analyst work. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's dig deeper, I guess, in some of the things. And I think we were discussing this when we were talking about this show. Okay, what do we want to talk about, I guess, right? And then we were thinking of different topics. And one of the things that always fascinates me is the difference between you have sort of the product perspective, that is one perspective. Then you have the buyer's perspective. Okay,
Yes.
slightly different, even though people are going to argue, shouldn't that be same? But then politics get in the way, and sometimes the interests are very different in terms of what everybody is trying to accomplish inside the product organization. Product may have very different interests, marketing may have very different interests, etc., right? And then you have the investors, which is a completely different force.
Hmm.
They have completely different priorities, and because of that, your go to market strategy, etc., is going to be very different as well, right? So from your perspective, let's say if you were to provide some layers into these three different perspectives based on what you have seen, how would you describe them?
Yes. So, at least from my perspective, in my current role as an independent analyst, I see these three buckets of customers, vendors, and investors as my constituencies. But each one is definitely looking for something different. When I'm speaking with customers, I think back to my first decade in tech when I was an end user and I was helping both startups and enterprises to manage IT. That was my literal job. I was working IT project management. I was working in IT cost management. I was dealing with bills. I was talking to vendors, trying to beat them down, trying to get my KPIs done. And honestly, that's what the customer mindset, the end user mindset, when they're talking to me, they're trying to solve a problem. They are looking for recommendations on AI technology, data management technologies, business intelligence, IT cost management, IT asset management. They are looking for nuts and bolts solutions that are better than spreadsheets to get the job done. That is the most basic challenge that I run into. Typically, they will have two or three solutions that they have looked into pretty closely, and that gives me an idea of whether they are going in the right direction or whether they might need to look at one or two new players that they might not have had on their list. And it's really about providing them with guidance. And I find those conversations to be the most fun, to be honest. That's why I got into this analyst game, because I thought there was room for more advisors, people who could actually help
Yeah.
customers to shortlist their efforts and to look for newer vendors that might get lost in status quo thinking.
Yeah, so very interesting. So now let's take the whole industry view, I guess, and I want to
Mhm.
understand your perspective, right? So obviously, even inside the enterprise software industry, IT, it gets very deep. For example, you get very deep into telecom.
Oh
I
yes.
don't know how many people really understand telecom, to be completely honest, even though they would argue that they are part of IT. Uh,
Hmm.
Now, when you get into the whole, for example, let's say manufacturing gets very deep as well in the MES layer. Sure,
Oh
you have
yes.
enterprise software, but then you have the hardware play as well. So IT is pretty much everything. So let's say if you were to provide the overarching view of the industry, how would you structure or group, maybe categorize, different categories that we have inside IT as well as.
Gosh, there's so many different types of IT right now, dealing both. It used to be really simple. When I started 16 years ago, I feel like it was much easier to simply split this kind of into software and hardware, and there were a few basic software categories that really mattered in the IT world, such as ERP and CRM. Some MES systems to some extent, but things like manufacturing systems were seen, and SCADA were seen as kind of stepchild to the side compared to the core CRM, ERP, and database IT world that existed. but now everything is digital, right? So we have to look at each of these little categories that exist, and there's a lot of room to specialize into these niches. And I think, especially with sales and marketing, there has been explosion of capabilities that now exist that used to just be a lot of guesswork. And I feel like really every department in the workplace now has its own set of technologies that are interesting to look at. So even finance now
Yeah.
doesn't just have a few software capabilities to look at, say, stocks or planning and budgeting, but there's things for consolidation and close,
Yeah.
and you can look at treasury, you can look at tax, you can look at all these areas now that have their own software solutions and markets really that have to be considered. And of course, everybody has to worry about AI and whether something's in the cloud or not, which is are other completely different sets of technological considerations.
Yeah, yeah. So I definitely want to dig into some of these stories, from the work that you have done, and I don't know if you are going to have live examples, of and funny ones, whatever, because sometimes the analysts they could be perceived as I don't know, there is always a disconnect between how the enterprise software vendor sees the market versus how analysts, see the market, right? So I don't know if you're going to have any sort of funny stories there in terms of what you were trying to champion versus what they were trying to champion. I guess everybody has their own ways of looking the world, right? But before we do that, let's take your perspective on AI. So what do you think is going to happen with AI? What's your perspective? Let's say if you look at the whole IT, what's going to change? Are we going to experience any sort of changes in the enterprise software categories? Do you have any live examples of the categories that you have seen that you might be able to provide right now?
Gosh, for most of the time that I've been running Amalgam Insights since 2017, we've been talking about the theme of from BI to AI, this
Yeah,
inevitable transition of going from analytics and reporting and visualization and being a smarts data analyst to being augmented with intelligence to get things done, and all the things that you have to learn to go from data to algorithmic augmented workflows. And that has been a real challenge because, frankly, people who are great at doing data analyst work don't necessarily want to have to figure out how to become data analysts. And vendors who are already making hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue don't necessarily want to be told that their technologies are becoming outdated and need to be upgraded. So that part was a real push, honestly, in the first 3 or 4 years of Amalgam Insights. As I would have these conversations, some of my analyst colleagues would have these conversations with vendors and simply be told, "No, I think we're market leaders and we're going to be okay. We are." MicroStrategy. We are information builders. We are SaaS too. Like we don't have to worry about those other players that are out there that are coming up because we are on top of what we're doing. And it has been kind of satisfying the past few years to see how AI has come up to the extent that every company has had to reimagine what analytics need to look like, what business intelligence needs to look like, and figuring out that some of the things that we used to really focus on as data analysts, such as report building, really are not that important. I've been waiting my entire career for report building to go from being this magic thing that you had to ask somebody to do and take 6 weeks to build to something that just happens out of the box, because I've never felt like that needed to be a job. Even back in the day when I was working with Crystal Reports and all of the older BI technologies back in the day.
yeah. So let's talk about stories. I don't know if you're going to have any stories from the work that you have done. Are you able to touch on those?
Yeah. So I think that part of the challenge with the stories is that so much of this is proprietary
Yeah, yeah,
and
I get it.
NDA. Like when you're a large enterprise company and you're talking about switching from SAP to Oracle, you don't want that to be a public story,
Yep, yep,
or,
yep,
or 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 vice versa.
yeah,
But I feel like the one of the biggest themes that I've seen in my work is talking to vendors that continuously miss the mark with what they are doing. I think that it is very easy to get caught up in your own hype, especially when you've had initial success. And I feel like the most consistent thing I've seen in my career is walking into a market where you see a company that has raised $100 million run by some 25-year-old founder who insists that they know everything about the market and insists that you as an analyst are just a talking head who
Yes.
has no idea what they're talking about and has can't provide any guidance on how to help get that company from say 100 million to 200 million, and then they find out 2 or 3 years later that their 100 million is turning into 50 million and then 20 million, and then you see them sold for parts. And
Yep.
it's a sad to see that, but it's also something that has happened over and over and over again, especially in this VC backed world of tech. I think my biggest caution is that for the vast majority of companies out there that are new, that they need to transform faster than they think, and they need to be more open to external perspectives, because I think it's extremely easy for tech companies to get caught up in their own hype rather than the rapidly changing needs that customers have.
And that's a very important point because I always think this even for our own business. I guess I'm always like, okay, figuring out, okay, what's our identity, who are we,
Hmm.
and let's say, and one of the my favorite topic always is, let's say if we were to sell this company, who's going to acquire and why are they going to acquire this, and that sort
Right.
of sets up the context because you figure out your place in the world, and that
Hmm.
figuring out the place in the world is very important for everybody, every single company. I don't care how disruptive you are. I don't care how great you are, but the process is called category alignment, and that's where I guess I feel the analyst could bring a tons of value in general. In my personal experience, do you have any follow-ups there?
Yeah, I found it really interesting how markets change over time. So when I started as an industry analyst, I was in my early 30s, and I was basically crunching a lot of survey data to turn into 40-page benchmark reports that people would end up spending thousands of dollars to purchase to use that data. And I
Yeah.
thought that was going to be my entire role in this industry analyst world. I did not see myself as somebody who was on camera or speaking about tech trends. And I was covering a bunch of companies, which at the time, the telecom expense world, they were getting those 50 million and $100 million funding rounds. They were doing IPOs left and right. As wild as it sounds now, that 2008 timeframe, 2009 timeframe was a time when those companies were super hot. Now I've been covering that market the entire time. 15 years later, these are a bunch of companies that are looking for exits, often have been run by a founding team, the ones that have survived for 15 or 20 years. And it's a very different conversation now, because instead of talking about venture capital funding, we're talking about mature companies that are looking for buyers on the private equity side or on the mature software or managed services side. And it's a completely different set of demands that are going on from a financial perspective, different types of players. Uh, there are some practical needs around just simply figuring out, okay, these are some founders that want to get money to retire on, rather than talking about the venture capital type world. There's succession planning to a greater extent, and there's a lot of different business nuances that come into those types of discussions compared to venture capital, where I feel like a lot of that is simply about a playbook of tripling your business every single.
Yeah, that's a very interesting perspective. So let's go back to this whole, new direction that you were talking about, about the micro strategy informatica. I don't know where they stand right now. There was a
Mhm.
story in between that Salesforce was trying to acquire Informatica, I believe. That was my understanding, right? But then you have tight alignment between Salesforce and Snowflake. And yesterday's story, I don't know whether you looped into that or not, from SAP, that there are two stories coming from SAP, right? So one is they are doing very similar data cloud as your Salesforce.
Yeah.
Salesforce was always saying that, hey, we are the only ones who have this. We are supposed to be the gateway for data, which is very exciting.
Mhm.
But then other categories are equally important as well, I guess, right? I mean, it's not just the CRM or CRM data, which is going to be the only thing which is going to be. So now you have this, and this is a very interesting mix, right? Because SAP has announced that they are going to probably resell Databricks. That this is a public announcement.
Yes.
Um, and then they have the data cloud as well. So obviously, there's going to be much tighter alignment overall between SAP and Databricks. And I don't know if down the line they are going to acquire Databricks. That could be a possibility, which is the hottest company right now, right?
Mhm.
So okay, so Salesforce is Snowflake, very tight.
Right. Mhm.
SAP Databricks, very tight. Oracle is trying to claim that they are probably going to win in the AI game because they have something that nobody else has, right? But they
Mhm.
don't have a Snowflake or Databricks, and I don't know where you stand in that, right? Microsoft is a different beast because they are claiming that they have all of this. So in the data and AI space, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, who's going to be the winner? Which is the hottest category in your mind? Is Databricks the hottest company right now, or do you feel somebody else is probably going to win the data and AI?
Yeah, it's definitely a battle of the titans right now, and everybody is both working with and against each other. So,
Yeah.
uh, I, so my caveat is I spent yesterday at a conference for the Enterprise Technology Management Association, where I was literally flying in, going to the conference, and leaving on the same day. But I did get to look at the Databricks and SAP announcement, for instance, where SAP is selling this business data cloud where they are using Databricks SQL and their catalog, and they're basically grouping all the tools that you need to dig deeply into SAP data with zero copy access, basically accelerated access, and being able to get into SAP metadata to be able to pull back and forth with your enterprise data. So I thought that was a great announcement because it takes advantages of Databricks, both Databricks' ability to work with have a variety of data technologies, and it pushes back against a business pressure that SAP has had, in that Snowflake has been taking some of the data management and data warehousing capabilities from SAP, and so SAP needed some sort of hedge, and Databricks works both from a technology perspective and a go-to-market perspective, since Snowflake and Databricks have obviously been pushing and fighting against each other for the past few years. So now SAP has this partner to help keep some of that data lake business as with kind of this joint partner, Databricks. And so that SAP Databricks partnership is very interesting. And it's an example of how two companies, SAP and Databricks, they both have data warehousing technologies. They both have SQL capabilities. They both have data lakes. SAP obviously has HANA. It's not like they don't have data and business intelligence capabilities, but they found a way to work with and frenemy up with Databricks in this case, because they have another, I guess, joint enemy in this case in Snowflake. But things like this are happening across the board because Databricks themselves, they also have Azure Databricks, which is a big product for them. Where if you go to the Microsoft Cloud, you get Databricks, and Microsoft and Databricks work together on that kind of package. Snowflake is happy to work with any enterprise software's data and take over the data warehousing to the extent that they can, and as well as the data lake things. Like all these things go back and forth. Everything is so interconnected. But I think at the end of the day, right now, Databricks just has such a broad set of capabilities, and I think the biggest thing that they did that really helps them on the enterprise side is the really boring one, yeah, digging into SQL and being able to support traditional data warehousing capabilities with high performance. And being able to do that kind of plugged in a really important traditional data use case that was harder for Databricks to talk about previously, and probably where Snowflake was making the most headway against them. And now Snowflake has to catch up on the lake side. I see that as so I see Databricks having an edge right now, but it's far from over. Obviously, traditional players like Microsoft and Oracle still have cards to play.
Yeah, yeah. So this is very interesting. So one question, and this could be political question, and you don't have to answer if you don't. And I don't know if you have ND or whatever, right? But I'll still ask.
Mhm.
So what is going to happen to the SAP's legacy offering from the data warehouse? Do you have any information there? Are they going to carry it? Are they going to decommission it? Because traditionally they were selling it as more of the, hey, I've got everything. I don't need Databricks.
Right. Gosh, I think that the legacy SAP world is in a difficult predicament. SAP obviously would have liked to have sunsetted a lot of the legacy capabilities a while ago, but they keep getting pulled into supporting it to 2025 and 2030. And the horizon keeps going farther out as SAP realizes that the environments that they've created are simply customized to really be able to support to be able to translate to HANA easily. And honestly, if you're a customer of SAP legacy capabilities and you were already locked in, there's no real reason to want to switch. The entire reason for bringing SAP in the first place is that you wanted one platform to handle all of these capabilities, from traditional enterprise software capabilities to analytics. So actually wanting like there's this problem that they sold it too well, and companies bought in too well to the original vision.
Yeah, yeah. So in your
I don't think
experience,
that.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I think that with SAP legacy technologies, at the end of the day, there's always going to be a market for it. But I SAP has been loath to sell off or spin off legacy technologies the way that IBM has ended up doing with some of their software capabilities, selling off to HCL, for instance. But I would think that SAP would want to do that over time if they really want to stay a modern software company, because at some point 20-year-old stuff is not where you want to be spending all of your time supporting.
Yeah, so that's a very interesting argument, and IBM ACL plays very interesting as well, right? Because in my mind, IBM is a consulting company. It's not necessarily a product company, even though they have products, and they have been trying to figure out their own identity as well. Even today, I
Mhm.
think they are going to have a lot of products, but I mean, their main business is still very consulting centric.
Yes.
And my understanding of ACL business model is they want to go after every legacy software categories, because that's how they make money in maintenance. Like,
Hmm.
so their business model is, but surprisingly enough, I mean, they have done wonders, I guess, to those products. They have become really good product organization, whatever reason. I mean, they're doing really good. The things, I don't know whether you have reviewed some of the products from ACL, but overall, like, they are doing really good, compared to what they were known for, or what
Yeah,
you have
it
seen
ended
from
up.
companies like ACL.
Yeah, it ended up being a good home for some of these solutions like Lotus, that where it was always a good brand name. It does its job from a messaging perspective, but it just wasn't the right kind of business for IBM to be supporting over time. And seeing those types of companies, those types of products being moved to more managed service oriented companies that were willing to give those products more attention has been good. IBM has always struggled with trying to figure out whether it should be a software product company or not, and it goes back and forth. They buy billions of dollars in software solutions, and then they uh, figure out that they're having trouble keeping up because it's a very different type of business from the mainframes and the consulting businesses that they have. And then they go back, and now they've come back and they have Red Hat, and they recently bought Apptio a little while ago, and they're starting to get back into the software game, but with acquisitions that are more tightly integrated with IT infrastructure and platforms at the end of the day, rather than trying to get into the more SaaSy sales performance and marketing performance and procurement type areas that they were trying to get into.
Yeah, I agree. I think they were always a very technical organization. So anything that is going to be super technical is what IBM is really good at.
Hmm.
So I completely agree with the newer strategy, the one that they have taken from the IT infrastructure. Yeah. So let's go back to the politics a little bit more. Okay.
Oh, sure.
And I'm always interested in that. So so obviously you have these alliances between your Databricks plus your SAP Databricks plus Microsoft. You already
Mhm.
mentioned that they have that. I don't know if Microsoft plus Snowflake exists. I don't know if that is there or not. They must be open, I guess. Any of the cloud platforms. I don't think they are going to be as guarded.
Mhm.
So now, I mean, Oracle's claim is that they are the data warehouse company. They were always the only reason why they got into the whole business software categories is because they wanted to sell more databases and more
Yes.
AI. So
Mhm.
this was always their bread and butter. So what do you think? I mean, who's going to win in this game? Because in my mind, the Snowflake, Databricks, both are very new technology. I don't know if
Mhm.
Oracle has something similar to that or not. If they don't, obviously they are not going to win. So number one, do they have? Or the second question is going to be the vendors that are forming these alliances. Are they going to win in the AI game, or the vendors who are sort of baking their own technology internally?
Yeah, I think Databricks and Snowflake both have their strong use cases. Databricks is fantastic if you're working on an AI project and want to have some basic data infrastructure to figure out those models. Snowflake has always been, since its start, the easiest place to start for data warehousing. So I was a database administrator for a little while in my tech uh, life, and just setting up a data warehouse has always been really complicated. And
Yep.
Snowflake just makes it super easy. I love how strategically Oracle has snuck in back into the game. Oracle Cloud was considered, frankly, kind of a joke for a really long time. And then they figured out a strategy that worked, a combination of improving their networking capabilities on a global scale, being able to sync, being able to partner with other clouds. It's a little odd to watch actually because Oracle has been so friendly and open, I would say, from a data strategy perspective, which is not necessarily what your first thoughts of Oracle necessarily across the board historically. But I do think that Oracle has figured out how to make their cloud an interesting capability that every enterprise wants to bring in addition to their cloud of choice, whether that be Amazon, Microsoft, or Google. And then, so for instance, the Microsoft Oracle synchronization in particular is really strong. But then Oracle has also gone after these primary data sources, such as Cerner on the healthcare side.
Yep.
They're rumored to be going after TikTok, possibly. And that is a piece of the puzzle that they are uniquely able to support because a company like Amazon or Google isn't necessarily going to go after these other big data sources. Microsoft could theoretically do it. They have some app strengths and capabilities, but they're not as likely to do so. So Oracle's kind of going in a different direction to grab all of the data than everybody else, and it's been working so far. So there are going to be these different paths that come into place. And then I haven't been talking about Microsoft very much so far, but
Yeah.
obviously Microsoft has capabilities across the board in data and has for a long time. Microsoft SQL Server, everything around the Microsoft Azure world, everything around Microsoft Data Fabric. All these capabilities are definitely there and competitive across the board against other vendors. And Microsoft also has obviously their applications and their developer community that have been fantastic throughout the years. So it's hard to see Microsoft disappearing from the mix as either. It's this battle royale. It's really fun to watch.
It is. It is. So let's talk about some of the legacy vendors, okay? And some of these are very interesting. And I don't know what your perspective is going to be, whether they are going to survive. What is their secret sauce? Maybe provide their strategy, where they are excelling, why they are surviving.
Mhm.
So my take is going to be Informatica, MicroStrategies, the second one that you had mentioned, and then the SaaS as well. I mean, when I look at SaaS, they show up in strange places.
Yeah.
Sometimes I see them like customer engagement, quadrant, and I'm like, okay, what the hell are they doing there? So SaaS, MicroStrategy, and Informatica. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so SAS, I've always found a really interesting company. Obviously, they have been a predictive analytics solution forever, and they successfully verticalized their solution to work with every other industry and department. So they have a book of business in pretty much every area where you would want to use analytics or data science at this point. But they haven't really been able to make the jump to uh, cloud and AI, at least being associated with these topics the same way that a Databricks would, for instance. Nobody says Databricks versus SaaS, even though SaaS honestly has a lot of products that do directly compete. And so I think that's a real challenge. It's easy as an analyst to say, oh, SaaS is perhaps waning. And yes, from a pure numbers perspective, that's true. But from simply the book of business that they have, it's hard to just ignore $1 billion business at any point, no
Yeah,
matter where the growth direction is. I think it's easier for us sometimes as analysts to be excited about the $50 million company that is growing
yeah,
rapidly rather than the elephant that is SaaS
yeah.
that you can't ignore. That said, I think it's a hard position that they're in because SaaS kind of reminds me of, say, Tibco, a company
Yeah.
that is ripe for acquisition and will unfortunately probably be broken up in some ways.
Yeah, so maybe talk about TIPCO
Yeah.
as well, a little bit. Where is TIPCO right now? Because, I mean, they are being disrupted by pretty much everybody in the market. I don't know how their iPaaS business is doing. I don't know if they call iPaaS. I mean, they were primarily the integration player. Then they had MDM as well. And there are many different MDM products in the market at this time, I guess. The newer one, the cloud ones.
Yeah.
I don't know how they are doing. BPM category is completely disrupted. Right now, ServiceNow is killing everybody else, I guess.
Yes.
So where are they in your experience?
They, which one exactly?
Chipco?
Tibco. Oh gosh, I feel bad about this one. Tibco was so good at so many things, especially around streaming, for such a long time. And honestly, they got acquired by PE and got rid of all their talent. So now they
Okay.
are being torn up for parts and being maximally profitable, I guess, is the most polite way to say it. But I don't really run into Tipco anymore from an inquiry perspective. All the other companies that have maintained progress have really passed them by, to be honest, from a new business perspective.
Yeah,
It's much easier to recommend a company like Informatica, for instance,
yeah,
which has continued to make progress over time, continues to acquire new companies, continues to push towards their cloud business, which has grown to over $1 billion. They had this. I would say it's like a tale of two cities, where uh, Tibco shows what happens when you get bought and then get pushed to simply make as much profit as possible. Informatica had a path to modernize over time, which they have successfully pulled off, and now they are still competing in all of their markets, especially around integration and MDM.
yeah. So very interesting. So now let's touch on the BI vendors a little bit. And
Mhm.
everybody's saying AI is the new BI, which is very interesting. But AI is going to be pretty much everywhere, right? So
Mhm.
90% of the categories are going to be super easy to use. You probably don't require as much um, you know data acquisition skills, if I could use that term, I guess. uh,
Yeah. Mhm.
right. Obviously the data warehouse is going to have a role to play. The transactional systems are never going to be the main source for everything, I guess. That will be a horrible idea to keep all of that data, so you still need the data warehouse, right? Now if you keep all of this in data warehouse, and for the most part the AI agents are going to be sort of the self-serving, self-sufficient, to be able to extract these insights. So that is number one problem, that now do you really need BI layer?
Hmm.
because now you AI agents can do that, right? So that is number one. And number two, for example, let's say if you look at some of the SNOP categories or FP&A category, CPM, corporate performance management, I think you were talking about those as well, financial consolidation. They were sort of playing the role, in terms of the consolidation. They were not never data warehouse. They were
Hmm.
never BI, and people were wondering what the hell they are then.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Right? So, are they going to become the new category from the BI perspective? What is going to happen to BI categories? So there are too many questions, I guess, but I mean, they are all kind of interconnected.
Yes. So I think that data structure and data management are going to continue to be important. The first step for any AI project is always data quality and understanding how to maintain structured and clean data as is fundamentally still important. And even though we have these data prep and data quality tools, it's still a job that is hard to fully automate. AI is actually very helpful in doing some of the basics like getting rid of nulls and getting rid of misspellings and doing some of the basic data quality stuff. But you don't want to necessarily give a 100% clean stamp without some sort of human check for the biggest anomalies. So I think there's still very much a human role for that data structuring and the data architect world. But I think that the traditional business intelligence story is about to be massively disrupted. So about a decade ago, a company called ThoughtSpot
Yeah.
really made a mark by doing natural language based analytics. And they did a fantastic job of selling their idea of basically analytics as Google search. But now that has become basically the expectation for every single BI
Yeah.
company under the sun with the use of agents. And now the story is changing to how do we create sets of enterprise agents that create both the reports and the workflows and perhaps some automation as well. That's going to be the next story of business intelligence, creating all these agents. And there's an interesting dichotomy going on there as well. I feel that you have the likes of Salesforce and ServiceNow who obviously have their agents, but their agents are only for their own platform rather than for the data warehouse world or the enterprise data world in general. I think there's still some space for some third parties to come up and become the Tableaus and clicks of agents or the Informaticas and MuleSofts of agents. These third parties that provide you with agents to go across all of your data use cases or aggregate the agents in some way that have been created in all of these separate platforms so that you can keep track of them over time. That's going to be its own separate problem. And I don't see anybody nailing that market as of yet. It's going to be this new IT management category. And there are definitely players like Boomi out there who are thinking about agent management. At Workday just came out with their announcement around the agents having the agent records system of record. That these will be interesting players to watch in trying to figure out how to manage these agents. But I think that's the next piece of the puzzle is figuring out how to simply type something and then have these outcomes of reports or automation, and then being able to track them over time and being able to manage them and being able to see how expensive or performant they are, etc. Those management challenges.
Yeah, so very interesting. So let's say if you were to forecast, okay, what's going to happen in the next 5-ish years, not five, let's take maybe 20 years, from the AI perspective,
Oh wow.
how would any of the applications change, the behavior of applications? So what do you see like in 20 years, how the architecture is going to be?
I think the biggest fundamental challenge, change in enterprise applications will be around the increased integration of video and voice to provide real-time changes. So being able to monitor all these conversations that are happening and provide real-time sentiment that actually changes transactional decisions. So being able to make a financial decision based on the current pulse of your customers right now is a fantasy land because honestly, I don't know what my help desk and contact center are thinking about right now when I'm trying to make a financial planning decision. Like that level of translation just doesn't exist, because it would take even with our current AI capabilities, it would take probably a few days to figure out how to translate that level of activity to something that would possibly be meaningful from a customer sentiment perspective that pushes revenue in a meaningful and measurable way. So I think that type of interaction will be increasingly more prevalent over the next decade, if I have to push out to that level of timing, because almost nothing else is predictable over a decade. All I know is that AI is going to be much cheaper and more prevalent all over the place, but I don't know how. Nobody knows how. If you know how, you're either lying or you need to start a company right now and become a billionaire.
Yeah, could not agree more. I think great point. Did you want to cover anything that we could not cover as part of this episode?
Gosh, I think one of the big changes that's happening right now in IT that's kind of a secret is actually the cost structure of technology. For such a long time, I feel the past decade, there's been such pressure to simply cut costs, cut costs, cut costs, and I feel like what got lost in that equation is the value of technology in driving revenue. There's so much documentation of IT in improving productivity, but I see that as kind of a zero sum game, because when you're talking about productivity, you're often talking about getting the same job done afterwards that you got done before and just cutting people out, which is uh, we're both MBAs. We know that that is a one of the business goals that you have, but if that's the only business goal you have, you're basically on a sinking ship if you're not thinking about how to grow your revenue as well. So I feel like one of the new trends that I'm seeing that is nice to see is how technology actually is supposed to help with revenue as well. With I would say a forward-thinking company, and being able to figure out not just how cloud is there to keep you from having to buy another server, but what this actually means in terms of being able to build a much larger company. I feel like that has been a useful trend to see over the past couple of years that has not necessarily been as prevalent.
Okay, perfect. Any more final, thoughts and any sort of, plug that you might have? And if people want to reach out to you, how they can find you?
Oh yeah, so I would say just as a final thought that uh, although I'm really bullish on AI as a future-facing technology, I really do think that this is a year to be testing out AI, and there will be a lot of pressure from the CFO office to provide a quick 12-month or six to 12-month payback period. So I think you have to have this two-tiered strategy. You have to have a specific project that can provide the ROI and make your financial stakeholder happy. But you also have to have a broader experimental mindset, thinking this isn't just about 2025. This is about how we're going to work 2030, 2035, 2040. Frankly, probably the rest of our careers. It's going to be a fundamental change, much like the mobile device, the smartphone ended up being, where honestly, we didn't know in 2008 how the iPhone was going to change the business. We just knew that it was happening, and we had to spend time and resources figuring out all the stuff around how the App Store worked and how mobile applications were built, and how where we wanted parity with the desktop and where we didn't. A lot of that thought process had to come into being before the mobile app became the powerhouse that it is, and we're going to see the same type of thing with AI agents and AI capabilities. So I'm really excited to see how everybody figures this out. And that's going to be our job, right, Sam?
Yep.
We're just going to be here trying to stay one step ahead of everyone else, and then sharing the information with everyone. Arbitrage game.
That's definitely our job. I mean, that's a responsibility that we have to shoulder.
Yeah.
But that's also fun, right? I mean, we really love this space. Being the analyst, tracking the industry, really guiding them where they need to go, I guess.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, perfect. So I think we are, coming to close right now. Hyan, I really want to thank you for your time. You are incredible. Lots of energy and insights always. So always fun partnering with you. Just for my audience, if you joined for the first time, this was part of our podcast series for which we meet every Friday. Generally, not every Friday, but if you want to stay tuned to future episodes, you simply need to watch my wall. On that note, thanks everyone for tuning in today. Thanks, Ian.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.